Jatinder Singh ji, and most welcome Mr. Piyush Sharma Saab. He is really an expert in this field, and there could none other be better than him who could address these issues today. All the participants and the members of PhD Chamber, Office Bearers of PhD Chamber, I am really thankful to Dr. Jatinder Singh for conceptualizing and visualizing these kinds of programs, which are really apt and contemporary for the kind of challenges that we are facing today. We are all aware of the devastating impact of COVID-19 had on our lives. Sudden imposition of lockdown at the national level without even analyzing the possible impacts of it were realized much later. Rather, I would say not much later. Just after a week or so, we started realizing the impact of it. When the lockdown was declared, it was simply stated that the organizations will keep on paying salaries to their employees and to the laborers, without realizing the source from where the organizations will mobilize funds for this purpose. And you all have seen the kind of devastating impact it had, not only on the industry, but historic kind of events took place, devastation at all levels. And it was for the first time in my 68 years of life that I have seen millions of people walking thousands of kilometers on foot without food, shelter, and water, with entire family. And there was not at all any visualization of this kind. So it was just thought that perhaps we have issued an order and the workers will continue to be paid. The situation that was then prevailing and the kind of fear psychosis that was there amongst the general public, people who could afford to be safe, they were trying to remain inside their houses, trying to remain safe. And those who felt that perhaps if there was life at all, it could be at their hometown or at their native villages, rather than starving at places like Bombay, Delhi, and Madras, and all other big cities. Sporadic attempts by NGOs and some religious organizations, some self-help groups, and some enlightened individuals could only partly relieve them of the ordeal. Someone provided food, someone provided water, someone provided transport. All that was highly inadequate for the kind of situation we were facing, crisis we were facing. And in the whole process, what happened? The voice of the small scale industries or medium scale industries or micro industries about not paying wages or not being able to afford paying wages was lost somewhere. Because the challenge before the whole world, in fact, including our nation, was how to face this crisis. And in the whole background, it appeared that this demand from the industry that we should not be asked to pay was something completely inhuman, without realizing that, after all, industry is also facing the same consequences and several sectors have completely been devastated. Talk of hospitality, talk of cinema halls, talk of restaurants, talk of rediwalas. I mean, you name any, barring a few exceptions like the medical profession, healthcare profession, and some ready-made food packaging industry, etc. Rest all have really faced the brunt of this crisis, this global pandemic. So in this entire confusion, the industry has been trying to struggle and raise its voices at different fora, including in the courts, and some developments have taken place. Most of these remain unreported. Those who are really directly concerned with it come to know about it, but others may or may not know. This initiative of PhD Chamber is aimed at making all of us aware of the legal position today with reference to the labor and employment in the background of global pandemic. And I think Dr. Piyush Sharma is the best person to have been roped in by PhD Chamber. And I'm really grateful to Mr. Sharma. Thank you very much, sir, having spared your time. And I would now not like to be between the participants and the speaker, and would request you to please enlighten us about the latest situation that we are facing and the way forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Singh sir, for laying the foundation of this webinar. And you have, in fact, in brief, have given 360-degree overview, like from employee as well as from employer perspective. And now, since we have a domain expert, Mr. Piyush Sharma will be giving us a lot of insights or to how to actually tackle the problems related, particularly from employer's perspective. So, without any further ado, I request Mr. Piyush Sharma to kindly take over. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jitendra Singh. Thank you, Mr. R.P. Singh. I would have thought that Mr. R.P. Singh would have been a very good speaker on the subject because he's covered most of the domain points. As Dr. Jitendra Singh has said, he's given us a 360 degrees overview. And let me start my presentation with a caveat that I do not know whether at the end of the presentation you'll be more enlightened than you are at the beginning of the session, because the situation itself is complex.
Yes.
We have not seen, at least the industrial world has not seen a problem like this before. What we learn from our history books is that we had a similar kind of flu about 100 years ago.
Yes.
And at that point of time, the industrialization level of the country was almost zero. We were not an industrial economy in the current context of the world. So it's a unique situation. And to that extent, we should be able to condone the government machinery, the employers, and the workers when we find them taking U-turns on the subject. More importantly, the government sector, as we have seen in the past, they have been compelled to take U-turn in the matter. Now, of course, what all we say, what is, labor being a tripartite subject. In fact, it's a multipartite subject, but there are three main stakeholders: the government, the employers, and the workers. Now, everyone has his own perspective about this current scenario, and they have their own opinion about it. The workers have felt that they should be given full wages for this particular period because it's not they who are declining to offer their services. The employers feel that since the workers are not coming on duty, since the industry is not functioning, and R.P. Singh Saab has named a few industries, we can go on adding to that list. And I would think that in addition to the hospitality industry, the travel industry is one industry which has suffered quite a lot. Not only the travel industry, the ancillary industries which are dependent upon travel, they have suffered substantially. And so have so many industries. And again, not only industry, the workers have suffered, the entire society has suffered. We have seen the kind of deaths that have taken place. We have seen the kind of helplessness that one felt when you were not able to get hospital beds for your near and dear ones, when you were not able to get even basic oxygen or medicines for the near and dear ones. And it was a situation of total helplessness. And this helplessness was not confined to one sector, it was spread throughout the society. I think all of you would remember that we were unable to offer any assistance to persons whom we knew, because I remember I used to get a lot of calls from my friends, from my relatives, that they would seek help from me in getting a bed in the hospital or getting an oxygen cylinder. And the scenario was such that we would just claim helplessness. Thank God that time is over. I hope that we do not have to face, not only we, our coming generations do not have to face a scenario like this again. I hope we will be better prepared next time. The only problem is that situations like this occur once in a century, and the lessons learned today may be forgotten over the next generation. So we have to prepare ourselves regularly. We have to update ourselves regularly and be prepared for nature's onslaught. Again, I do say it with a caveat that I do not know whether it was nature's onslaught or man-made onslaught. Only inquiries being conducted by WHO and other organizations will show what was the real genesis of this particular problem. Be that as it may, we do not have to concern ourselves with what was the genesis of the problem. What we have to see is how we were affected and how we take on the challenge. Now, PhD has framed a few issues for me. For today's discussions, I have recapitulated them in this slide. I will talk about these once again, but only for the sake of guiding the discussions. The issues are employers' legal obligations in respect of payment of wages during lockdown period. Second, whether the employer can lay off employees during lockdown and post-lockdown period. Next, whether employer terminates surplus employees, if so, what are the legal formalities? Next point, whether employer can persuade employees to go on compulsory leave without pay. Next issue, whether employer can debit / adjust the leaves of employees during lockdown period. Next point, whether employers can reduce pay and allowances / pay cut to employees. Next, whether employer can recall offer letters issued for fresh recruits / campus selection. Next point, whether the employer can defer the date of joining offered in offer letter for fresh recruits. Next, whether the employer can defer / cancel pay hike, increments, appraisals, and promotions. Next, what are the legal obligations of employer towards work from home employees? Next, what are the legal procedures for layoff? Next, can the employer realign work and offer proportionate pay and compensation benefits to the employees? And finally, can the employer modify mode of engagement / employment? Now, just as I mentioned, that whatever we say, the government side or the employer side or the worker side, whatever we say is our opinion. In the present constitutional setup, the final word comes from the courts, because it's the courts which have the right to make the situation clear and unambiguous. The problem is that courts have also given very few judgments on the subject. I propose to discuss one judgment only, which inherently contains another one, and hope that at the end of the day, the confusion would be reduced, although you may not be having a clear picture still. Why I say that? I will respond to it in one of my slides. Now, this is a judgment of the Honorable Delhi High Court. Delhi Golf Club Employees Union versus Union of India and others, delivered on 19th April 2021. So it's one union against the other. The Delhi Golf Club Employees Union versus the Union of India. Okay, now there were 3 writ petitions which were considered in this particular case. I'm highlighting the prayers or the demands of the workers in these 3 writ petitions. The first one, I've highlighted the important portion also. And I'm not reproducing the entire paragraph because I'm sure that those of you who are interested will always be able to revert to the case laws if they want to read it fully. Secondly, time and space does not permit me to go into each of the prayers fully, but I'm retaining the essential part. So this writ petition 3403 is essentially seeking quashing of the decision of the Delhi Golf Club terminating the services of the employees and requesting for a mandamus directing the official respondents to take action against the Delhi Golf Club for removing the petitioners from permanent employment during pandemic COVID-19, as well as to direct Delhi Golf Club to permit them to join their permanent employment amongst, and the relief claimed are reproduced below. Now, by way of background, let me share with you that the Delhi Golf Club had terminated the employment of the employees in the food and beverages department and had taken the decision to replace them with contractual employees. So the workers have challenged their termination and also the process of offering the work to contract labor in lieu of the regular labor. So what is the first prayer number of this in this particular petition? Writ, order or direction in the nature of mandamus or any other appropriate writ or order or direction, thereby directing respondents number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to take steps against the Board of Management of the Delhi Golf Club for taking away the right of livelihood and for violating the fundamental right to livelihood of the members of the petitioner and of the petitioner ensured / enshrined under Article 21 of the Constitution of the members by illegally removing them from their permanent employment during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and that too without following due process. So the first direction which was sought was action against the Delhi Golf Club for illegally removing them from their permanent employment during ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and that too without following the due process. Next prayer. Writ, order of direction in the nature of certiorari or any other coordinate appropriate writ, thereby directing respondent number 6 to quash and set aside decision of removing 59 employees members of the petitioner from permanent employment and issue a writ of mandamus to protect the permanent employment of the members of the petitioner amid the pandemic COVID-19 and to ensure that the members of the petitioner are allowed to join their permanent employment amid COVID-19 in the food and beverages department of the Delhi Golf Club. So the issue clearly focus around COVID-19. Next. This is number 4. I have skipped number 3 because it is not relevant for us. But for and our discussions. Number 4 is to ensure that the members of the petitioner, as detailed in Annexure P15, are not stopped from performing their duties during pandemic COVID-19 and to further ensure continuity of employment. So we are back to COVID-19 in this prayer also. Then, to act upon the order dated 29/3/2020 and 23/2020 bearing DO number ITNA issued by the respondent number 1 and 2 respectively, prohibiting the illegal termination of the employees amid the pandemic COVID-19. Now you would all recall that this order had created a lot of concern in the industry, because the order dated 29/3/2020 prohibited the employers from terminating the services and directed them to continue to pay wages. We'll come to this order in detail in a subsequent slide. So we will resume discussion on this at a later point of time. Then there was a second writ petition which was being considered in this particular case. That was 3941/2020. And in this also, the union demanded that stern action be taken against the Board of Management of the Delhi Golf Club for taking away illegally the right of livelihood of the petitioners, which were enshrined under Article 21 of the Constitution of the members of the petitioner by illegally removing them from permanent employment during ongoing pandemic COVID-19. Second, or rather number 6, I'm skipping the intermediary prayers. Writ or direct order or direction in the nature of mandamus or any other appropriate writ, order or direction, thereby directing the respondent number 1, 2, 3, and 4 to prosecute and take stern action against respondent number, that is the Board of Management of Delhi Golf Club, under Section 58 of the Disaster Management Act 2005. Now, what is Section 58 of the Disaster Management Act? Section 58 says, and it's not the complete section, I'm only reproducing subsection 1. Where an offense under this act has been committed by a company or body corporate, every person who at the time of offense was committed was in charge of and was responsible to the company for the conduct of business of the company, as well as the company, shall be deemed to be guilty of contravention and shall be liable to proceed against and punished accordingly. Where an offense has been committed by a company or a body corporate, every person who at the time of offense was committed was in charge of and was responsible to the company for the conduct of the business of the company, as well as the company, shall be deemed to be guilty of contravention and shall be liable to be proceeded against and punished accordingly. Provided the standard clause, saving clause, provided that nothing in this section shall render any such person liable for any punishment provided in this act, if he proves that the offense was committed without his knowledge or that he had exercised due diligence to prevent the commission of such offense. So this is what Section 58 of the Disaster Management Act says. Now we come back to the writ petition. The third writ petition was 5440, and in this the prayer was to get prohibited by the writ petition order direction or any other appropriate writ order or direction, thereby directing respondent number 1 to 4 to get prohibited by deployment of contract labor by forwarding the application of the petitioner under Section 10 of the Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act. To all those who are participants in this webinar, hopefully you would be familiar with the Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act. And Section 10 says that if you want to prohibit any work under the Act being prohibited from contract labor, then the matter has to be discussed by the Contract Labor Advisory Board, and only the state government can take the appropriate government can take a decision whether it should be prohibited or not. So this is what the petitioner prayed. Then during the course of discussions, the Delhi High Court sought to rely on the only other judgment which it had before it at that point of time, or from the Supreme Court, and that was a judgment in the Ficus Pax Private Limited versus Union of India. Union of India, reported in 2020 within bracket 4 of Supreme Court cases at page 810. So the High Court mentioned or observed that the judgment of the Supreme Court in Ficus Pax Private Limited and others versus Union of India and others is a complete answer to the petitioner's contentions, where the court observed as follows. Now you can go back to the issues which have been highlighted by the PhD chamber for today's discussions and read it with this particular observation of the High Court of Delhi. I am repeating it. The judgment of the Supreme Court in Ficus Pax Private Limited and others versus Union of India and others is a complete answer to the petitioner's contentions, where court observed as follows. Now, what are the observations of the Supreme Court? In para 37. Now, what must be seen in this particular judgment is that it is not averse to addressing itself to the dilemma faced by different stakeholders in the context of COVID-19. It has tried to take a very balanced approach to the scenario. Now it says, it cannot be disputed that the lockdown measures enforced by the Government of India under the Disaster Management Act 2005 had equally adverse effect on the employers as well as the employees. So the Supreme Court recognizes that the order had an adverse effect on the employers as well as employees. It goes on to say, various industrial establishments were not allowed to function during the said period, and those allowed to function also could not function to their capacity. There can be no denial that the lockdown measures which were enforced by the Government of India had serious consequences both on the employers and employees. Now you have seen the kind of consequences the decision had for the industry. Mr. R.P. Singh has also highlighted the kind of consequences that were faced by the workers, especially the unorganized sector workers, the migrant workers, and the workers who were self-employed. As he referred to the rediwalas, the patriwalas, the rickshaw pullers, all these categories of persons were affected. In these cases, there were no employer-employee relationship, but they were equally affected. So the order or the pandemic, order and the pandemic, I'll correct myself, had widespread repercussions for the entire society. No section of the society was left untouched. At an emotional level, I would highlight that the best of doctors, the top politicians, top bureaucrats, top members of the society, there were a cross-section of them which had succumbed to the COVID-19 challenge. So no section of the society was left untouched. Everyone suffered. and this was recognized by the court, especially when dealing with workers and employers. Next paragraph. As noted above, all industries oblique establishments are of different nature and of different capacity, including financial capacity. Now see the kind of deep understanding which the Supreme Court has displayed. It recognizes that all industries are of different nature and have different capacity, including financial capacity. Some of the industries and establishments may bear the financial burden of payment of wages or substantial wages during the lockdown period to its workers and employees. Some of them may not be able to bear the entire burden. So what does the Supreme Court observe? It says a balance has to be struck between these two competitive claims. The workers and the employees. It should be workers and employers. Although, the workers and employees, although were ready to work, but due to closure of industries, could not work and suffered. I remember way back in 1996, I was assigned a study by the Honorable Supreme Court of India, where workers of a particular industry had filed a claim before the Supreme Court of India that it is the employer who has refused to allow them to join duties, and therefore the employer should pay full back wages to them. The employer, on the other hand, countered that no, we have not refused these workers. They have not been coming. So there's no question of paying wages. The Honorable Supreme Court assigned this study to me and asked me to conduct a detailed inquiry and submit a report to it, along with my suggestions on how to resolve the matter. Now, during the course of my inquiry, what I found was, on the basis of the facts presented to me, that initially it was the employer who put up obstacles in the joining of the workers. But later on, the workers assumed that the employer is not going to allow us on duty and therefore stopped coming totally. So my suggestion to the Honorable Supreme Court was that since it's contributory fault on parts of both the sides must be punished, but both sides must be saved also. And therefore I suggested that the employer be directed to pay 50% back wages only. The proposal was accepted by the Honorable Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court directed the employer to pay 50% back wages. Thereby the employer saved 50% of the back wages, whereas the employees were able to get 50% back wages. So in a manner of speaking, true to the work that we used to do, which was primarily conciliation, we were able to work out a settlement between the two parties, which had a salutary effect on the industry as such. Now let's go back to the ficus facts. The Supreme Court in para 4.1, that is the key directions, it observed the private establishments, industries, employers who are willing to enter into negotiation and settlement with the workers, employees regarding payment of 50 days, or for any other period, and as applicable in any particular state, during which the industrial establishment was closed down due to lockdown, may initiate a process of negotiation with their employees' organizations and enter into a settlement with them. And if they are unable to settle by themselves, submit a request to the labor authorities concerned, who are entrusted with the obligation under the different statute to conciliate the dispute between the parties, who on receiving such request may call the employees' trade unions, workers, association of workers concerned to appear on a date for negotiation, conciliation, and settlement. In the event a settlement is arrived at, that may be acted upon by the employers and workers irrespective of the order dated 29/3/2020 issued by the Government of India, Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, this is one of the key observations of the Honorable Supreme Court in the peculiar context of COVID-19. So this is, I won't say that it is a case law forever in all situations, but this was a decision of the Supreme Court in the peculiar context of the case. Now, please note the word the private establishment, industries and employers. So the presumption is that the public sector is capable of taking care of its employees, and therefore this particular order is only for the private establishments. Second, for 50 days. Why 50 days? It was because the order dated 29/3/2020 was withdrawn by the Ministry of Home Affairs after 50 days. So since it was withdrawn, then the order ceased to have an enforcing effect on the private sector. We will come to the order dated 29/3/2020 and see the other implications again at a later point of time. But what is clear is that the Supreme Court was focusing on these 50 days. But I would go on and say that once it is talked of these 50 days, it is also said that or for any other period as applicable in any particular state. So the order is not confined only to these 50 days, although it focuses on these 50 days. I hope it is clear. I would request participants to note down their concerns, their issues, and once the presentation is over, you can please highlight those so that we can have a meaningful discussion. Because otherwise, it is a monologue, and a monologue, of course, is not the most welcome kind of information sharing. So we come back to the Delhi Golf Club case, and the Delhi High Court ruled, after, of course, considering a number of other connected issues. It said that one was, of course, that Chapter 5B of the provisions of the factory of the ID Act. It said, therefore, the provisions of Chapter 5B only apply to factory, mining, and plantation, and Delhi Golf Club apparently does not fall in these categories. Petitioners are taking a self-contradictory stand in as much as, while on the one hand it is alleged that there are violations of the provisions of the Industrial Disputes Act, on the other hand, instead of perusing the remedies under Industrial Disputes Act, petitioners insist on invoking the jurisdiction of this court. So, what does the court say? In view of the above, no directions can be issued in the present petition, and the same is accordingly dismissed along with all the pending applications. The court felt that the workers should resort or should depend on the guidelines given in para 41.1 of the Honorable Supreme Court of India, which said that they must resort to conciliation and thereafter, if necessary, industrial adjudication to resolve the issues. And resolve the issues under COVID-19, because as you have seen the prayers, it focuses on COVID-19. Now, let's see the order dated 28/7/2020. See, most of these orders which I'm going to read out to you or share with you as of now relate to the government's decision in respect of its own employees. However, this gives you an indication of the thought process of the government and the perhaps the kind of parameters which the courts would also take into account while taking decisions on the subject. So the office memorandum says this is regarding regularization of absence during COVID-19. The department has been receiving several references queries from central government employees who proceed on leave with station leave permission but could not report for duty due to non-availability of public transport, flights, and restrictions on inter/intrastate movements of persons as per the Ministry of Home Affairs orders from time to time to contain the spread of COVID-19 pandemic in the country. The matter has been considered and the following clarifications relating to regularization of period of absence during period of lockdown are issued in the matter. Now, I am repeating that these are primarily for government employees. Now, what is the situation? Illustrated situation is government servants who are on official tour and were unable to return to their headquarters due to non-availability of public transport. What is the decision? Deemed to have joined duty on the date of expiry of official tour, if intimation in any form indicating difficulty in joining duty due to non-availability of public transport or flights has been given by the government servant to the office. So even if the worker has not joined, even if the government official has not joined after the conclusion of his official tour, but if he's informed the authorities, he is deemed to have joined duty and therefore his salary starts accruing to him. Second situation, government servants who are on leave prior to, one is on official duty, second is who are on leave prior to issue of lockdown orders with effect from 25/30/2020 and leave ended during the lockdown period. So what is the decision in respect of these cases? Deemed to have joined duty from the date of expiry of leave, if intimation in any form indicating difficulty in joining duty due to non-availability of public transport, flights have been given by the government servant to the office. In case of leave on medical grounds, this is subject to production of medical certificate. So the leave gets automatically extended during the lockdown period. And the third scenario is government servants who left headquarters on weekend prior to the lockdown on 20/20, but could not return to headquarters on 23/20 due to non-availability of transport. Again, in this situation, the government servants deemed to have joined duty on 23/3/2020 if intimation in any form indicating difficulty in joining duty due to non-availability of public transport flight has been given by the government servant to the office. So the government has undertaken to pay the full salary wages due to the government servant if he is prevented, he or she is prevented from resuming duty because of absence of transport due to COVID. And absence of transport also includes that when lockdown is imposed and there's total curfew on the movements of individuals, then it means that he cannot resume duty. Now this is this is another order dated 1st March 2021. I repeat that these orders are primarily with respect to government employees, but it sets the tone for decisions to be taken subsequently by the courts. It is further clarified that this department's OM dated 28/7/2020 has been issued in view of circumstances that the country is going through due to COVID-19 situation and the unavoidable problems faced by the government employees in different sectors under the Government of India. What does it say? It gave three kind of situations in the previous order, that is 28/7/2020. But here it gives a clarification. A general terminology has been adopted to cover all kinds of problems faced by the employees due to COVID-19 situation. The said OM may not touch all specific circumstantial problems faced by all employees under the Government of India. However, an interpretation of such circumstances in congruence with the clarification made in the above OM is adopted. So the OM dated 1st March 2021 says that the order dated 28/7/2020 gives a general outline, and any subsequent decision, if not specifically covered by that order, shall be in congruence with the clarifications made in the order dated 28 July 2020. So this is a general principle which has been clearly laid down by the Government of India for its employees. And naturally, whenever Government of India takes such a decision for its employees, it automatically is extended to the public sector organizations under it, and it automatically gets adopted by the state governments also. Now, this is an office memorandum dated 20th March 2020. We are going back in time. The undersigned is directed to state that the leave sanctioning authorities were advised by OM dated 17th March to sanction leave to officials who wish self-quarantine as a preventive measure. Now, you would recall that orders regarding quarantine was also issued during pandemic. In this regard, in relaxation of Central Civil Services Leave Rules 1972, it has been decided with the approval of the competent authority to grant commuted leave, that is the sick leave, without production of medical certificate to those officials who are above 50 years of age and have underlying conditions, that is diabetes, respiratory problems, renal diseases, and other life-threatening illnesses for a period up to 4th April 2020, so as to avoid unnecessary burden on the healthcare system. So, even if the person is not actually sick, but if he is vulnerable to COVID-19, he would be granted medical leave in certain specific situations. Then I think this is the last one of the government series. Preventive measures to achieve social distancing to contain the spread of COVID-19. The decision are 1 and 2. The officials appointed as consultants / advisors after retirement who are of the age of 60 years and above may be allowed to work from home with the permission of the HODs without adversely affecting their consultancy fee / honorarium till 4th April 2020. So the order says that these persons who are above the age of 60 will be allowed to work from homes without adversely affecting their consultancy fee / honorarium. Second, the contractual / outsourced staff may also be allowed to attend office on rotational basis, as has been allowed for Group B and C officials without deduction of any wages for their absence of work. You know that of late, a lot of work has been outsourced in the government departments, in the public sector organizations. So to protect such employees or workers, this order says that the outsourced staff may be allowed to attend office on rotational basis. So if out of 15 days in a month, I'm taking the full month, the person attends office only for 15 days, alternate days, that means he will be still paid for the full month. This also sets the tone for the other sectors to follow. And as I mentioned earlier, that these orders, see if you can read the para 2, these instructions shall be applicable to ministries, / departments, / attached offices and subordinate officers of the central government. Similar instructions may be issued to autonomous statutory bodies. So it applies to the government departments. It also would be applicable in respect of autonomous statutory bodies. And naturally, it follows that the spirit has to be imbibed by the private sector also, provided, of course, it has the capacity to pay and provided it is functioning within the parameters laid down by the Supreme Court of India in the FICUS case in para 41.1. And the last one, state union territory government shall ensure adequate arrangements of temporary shelters. This is of course a general order. The last one is specifically relevant for us. All the employees, this is order dated 29/3/2020, which was later withdrawn. I had referred to it in my earlier slide. This is an order which was withdrawn after 50 days. The order said all the employees, be it in industry or in shops and commercial establishments, all the employers, I'm sorry, not employees, all the employers, be it in industry or in shops and commercial establishments, shall make payment of wages of their workers at the workplaces on due date without any deduction for the period their establishments are under closure during lockdown. Okay, so all employers were required to make payment to their workers on due date without any deduction. And the order continues, which will be of interest to all of you, but may not be applicable to all of you. If any landlord is, wherever the workers, including the migrants, are living in rented accommodation, the landlords of those properties shall not demand payment of rent for a period of 1 month. 5. If any landlord is forcing laborers and students to vacate their premises, they will be liable for action under this act. So this talks not only of workers or laborers, but also students. And it protects students also from being expelled from their rented accommodation and from landlords demanding rent for this particular period. So again, I mean, the situation was very in a state of flux. It was a never encountered before kind of a situation, and therefore the first reaction of the government at that point of time was to protect the interest of the vulnerable category of the society. The government at that point of time did not realize that it's not only the workers or the students or the tenants who are vulnerable, but a large section of industry is equally vulnerable because it pays the workers only because it earns. If it is not able to earn, how will it pay? At best, it can pay for a limited period, but it cannot continue to pay indefinitely. And what we've seen is that the lockdown had virtually been extended from time to time. So let's come back to the issues which were highlighted. I hope by now, a lot of you would have been able to formulate an opinion on the issues which have been raised for discussion today. Now, what are the employer's legal obligations in respect of payment of wages during the lockdown period? I go back to the only judgment available to us today, that is the Ficus case, which says that the employers and employees should sit down and negotiate. And if the negotiations do not work out, they should go in for industrial adjudication. Now, what we must remember is that the order in the Ficus case clearly stipulated that it should be put up for the consideration of the Honorable Supreme Court in July last year. My research on the website indicates that in July the matter was adjourned and it is likely to come up in August this year, and maybe in August this year we will be able to get a clearer picture of what the Supreme Court feels, that what kind of decision should be taken in this context. That second issue, whether the employer can lay off employees during lockdown and post-lockdown period. For this, it is necessary for us to go to understand what layoff is. Let's see. Layoff with its grammatical variations and cognate expressions, section 2 of the ID Act, subsection KKK, lays down that layoff means their failure, refusal, or inability. Now, mark the words: failure, refusal, or inability of an employer on account of shortage of coal, power, or raw materials, or the accumulation of stocks or breakdown of machinery, or natural calamity, or for any other connected reason. To give employment to a worker whose name is borne on the muster rolls of his industrial establishment, who has not been retrenched. Now the explanation says, every workman whose name is borne on the muster roll of the industrial establishments, who presents himself for work at the establishment at the time appointed for the purpose during the normal working hours on any day, is not given employment by the employer within 2 hours of his so presenting himself, shall be deemed to have been laid off for that day within the meaning of the clause. I'm not going through the rest of the definition. Look at the rider laid down in subsection KKK. Refusal or inability of the employer to give employment to a workman whose name is borne on the register of the establishment, who has not been retrenched. And the explanation says, I'm giving you an extract from it instead of reading the full explanation, and who presents himself for work at the establishment. See, and who presents himself for work at the establishment. So what happened during the COVID period? Yes, the employer was unable to give employment for natural calamity or for any other connected reason. But at the same time, the workers were also not able to present himself for work at the establishment. So again, we are back at catch-22 situation. Would the provision relating to layoff be applicable in such a scenario? Again, the courts have not given us any clarity on the matter, but to my mind, if the employee is unable to present himself for work at the establishment, then there's no question of layoff being invoked. It would not be layoff. Again, like I said, since the courts have not taken a final call on the matter, there can be dissenting opinion to what I have said. And I would not be able to oppose it with any amount of conviction. But I think we have no option but to await the decision of the Supreme Court in the matter. Whether the employer can persuade the employees to go on compulsory leave without pay. Now the point is, if the employer can refuse to pay wages to the employees, then I think the employees would prefer a situation of going on leave rather than being just being left high and dry. But the point is, the crucial issue is leave without pay. The question is, it would not be leave without pay because the person is not on leave, but he is without pay for this particular period. Please understand, what happens when a person is not on leave and he is not coming on duty? He is deemed to have abandoned his services. But in a scenario like COVID, when he is prevented from attending duty by the orders of the government, it cannot be said that he is deemed to have abandoned his duty. So whether compulsory leave or not, that's a different issue altogether. But it can be without pay subject to negotiations between the two parties. So the question of compulsory leave becomes infructuous. It's not relevant. All these issues which I'm mentioning at this point of time, please reserve your comments on these and we will discuss it. We are at 12:15. I'll take another 10 minutes or so and then we will have discussions in the matter. Whether the employer can debit adjust the leaves of the employees during lockdown. If leave over here, if a debiting or adjusting leave over here means leave with pay, then there is no problem at all. In fact, both sides, employer as well as the employees, would welcome it. Whether the employer can reduce pay and allowances or pay cut to the employees. The answer is again the same. Para 4.1 of the FICUS case, it will all be subject to negotiations between the two parties and subsequent adjudication if necessary. Whether the employer can recall offers later issued for fresh recruits campus selection. Again, during the COVID period, the employees or the candidates who were offered employment, they were prohibited or they were virtually stopped, prevented from coming because of the virtual curfew imposed by the system. And therefore, if regular employees can be terminated, as we have seen in the Delhi Golf Club case, then similarly, the fresh recruits would be on the same footing. And the subsequent query would have the same answer, whether the employer can defer the date of joining. In fact, the prospective candidate would welcome such a scenario because he would feel that at least my job is safe. Only my date of appointment is being deferred. And the answer to the next question, whether the employer can defer, cancel pay hike, increments, appraisals, and promotions. Again, the answer is the same. If payment can be stopped, wages can be stopped, again subject to discussions, then why not pay hike, increments, appraisals, and promotions? Of course, this would not be applicable to government because government had laid down a different set of parameters for itself. What are the legal obligations of employers towards work from home employees? We have seen that in respect of government, the government had taken a decision that work from home employees would be paid the same wages without any deductions. Similarly, for employees working in the private sector, I would feel that they would be entitled to same wages because whether they are working from home or whether they are working in the factory premises, they are working. And therefore, they should be entitled to normal, regular wages. What are the legal procedures for layoff? We've already discussed it in the above paragraph, so there's no need for us to review that discussion once again. Can the employer realign work and offer proportionate pay and compensation benefit to the employees? Broadly, yes. Why not? Because at the end of the day, the employees would also be happy that they are being given alternate work. And even the definition of layoff says that you can give the employees alternate work. So this should not be a handicap because at least the employees would be given a substantial amount of payment package. And finally, the last question is also contained in the previous question. Can the employer modify the mode of engagement employment? Why not? If it can terminate the employees, as we've seen in the Delhi Golf Club case, why not modify the mode of engagement employment, which at least gives the workers a hope, which ensures that they are able to get some payment. They continue to get some payment. So this is another article which is of relevant in respect of the context of layoff. It was published in the CNBC TV on May 4th, 21, which said that Maharashtra Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray has urged Prime Minister Narendra Modi to declare COVID-19 as pandemic as a natural calamity so that the government can use the State Disaster Response Fund to provide financial assistance to the affected people. Affected people here would mean both the employers and the employees. The Disaster Management Act 2005 defines disaster as a mishap, calamity, or grave occurrence in any area due to natural or man-made causes or by accident or negligence, which results in significant loss of life or suffering or damage to the property, and is of a magnitude which is beyond the coping capacity of the community of the affected area. So the Maharashtra government wanted COVID-19 to be declared as a natural calamity. But what does the Disaster Management Act say? It says, or rather, no executive or legal provision exists to declare a natural calamity as a national calamity. The 10th Finance Commission, however, examined a proposal that a disaster should be termed a national calamity of a rarest severity if it affects 1/3 of the population of a state. The calamity of the rarest severity has to be adjudged on a case-to-case basis. What happens if COVID-19 is declared a natural calamity? It will help the states to get more support from the center. A calamity relief fund can be set up. Declaring the pandemic as a natural calamity will help states to use money in the State Disaster Response Fund constituted under the Disaster Management Act to provide monetary relief to affected parties. Now, unfortunately, so far, it has not been declared a national calamity. So, friends, that is all from my side as far as the presentation goes. Now, I would welcome questions, clarifications, and discussions. It need not be only questions. I would welcome your opinion on the matter, because your opinion in the current scenario would be as important as anyone else's, of course, subject only to the decision of the Supreme Court. The decision or the opinion of the Supreme Court is final. Over to you, Dr. Jitendra Singh.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sharmaji, for such a comprehensive presentation, and in fact, through different judgments and also different sort of representations and also the notifications you have shown in the PPT, it actually gives a total eye opener in terms of where are the issues, challenges, and what can be the probable solutions. Now the floor is open to questions. I request all the participants to kindly post. You can in fact unshare your screen, sir. Sharmaji,
One minute, Dr. Singh.
Yeah.
I would be sharing a copy of this PPT with you,
Okay.
and therefore, if
Yes, sir.
I would be sharing a copy of this PPT with you,
Okay, ji.
I would be sharing a copy of this PPT with you, and anyone who wants it can collect it from you.
Thank you, ji. Thank you very much. This will be definitely a great help for all. So, in fact, Sharmaji, you can actually now stop this share screen so that we can bring in participants on this platform who wants to ask any question. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open for questions. Please let us know if there is any query or anything you want to know. We have our domain expert, Mr. Piyush Sharma, who will definitely like to answer your queries, and definitely it will result in some resolution also. You can raise your hand also. You can then come in this screen and you can ask directly your question to Mr. Sharma one-to-one. We have Mr. Brahm Bhardwaj. Okay, just a second. Yeah, Mr. Paramjit, can you make me the host so that I can bring the panelist on the screen so that they can ask questions? Mr. Paramjit, please make me the host.
I can raise a toast.
Actually, we have Mr. Kalyan Kumar also raised hand. Just a second. I'll just try to bring them. Paramjit, can you make me host so that I can bring the attendees to this panelist screen? Yeah, Ms. Ladley, can you ask Paramjit to do so? Meanwhile, till we have this time, Mr. Brahm, can you put your question in the chat box? Just a second, just a second. So, Mr. Sharma, then meanwhile, if you give me permission, I can ask you one of the questions that normally, on sub-organization also.
What
So,
I
like,
was what I was thinking was that when
Ji.
participants put questions to me, I would seek your assistance in answering them. But now you've turned the tables on me. You are asking questions. Chalo, welcome.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you. And one thing is like, what type of things should we need to consider before bringing employees back to work? For example, our employee had the COVID, right? Now, what type of documentation is required in terms of so that we are able to bring this employee back to work?
First of all, you will have to see where that we are living in Delhi. We have seen that the lockdown is being lifted in phases. From today, a lot more industries or a lot more commercial sector has been opened up for functioning, but some still remain closed. For example, schools, for example, some other sectors, they still remain closed for they still remain under lockdown. So you have to first see whether your industry, whether lockdown has been lifted in respect of your industry. That is the basic prerequisite. Thereafter, you have to see the parameters laid down in that. For example, in some sectors, only 50% of the strength is required. So you will not be allowed to take in the full complement of your staff. Only 50% of them can come in, and that can be done by rotation, so that everyone gets a chance. As we've seen that the Ministry of Home Affairs had issued an order that contractual employees who are working on alternate days may be allowed to work, but paid full wages. So again, no such instruction is issued as far as private sector is concerned. But the principle, if the matter goes before the Supreme Court, I am sure that the Supreme Court would consider this as a principle. Yet it would take into account the peculiarities of a particular industry. Yeah. I would not say that, given the principles which are laid down in the Ficus case, that it would pass a universal judgment saying that every industry will have to pay like this. I'm sure that the Supreme Court would decide on a case-to-case basis, and therefore the best course possible is that the parties should negotiate and settle the matter amongst themselves. Both of them should realize the limitation of each other. Both of them should realize the hardships faced by each other. And finally, of course, I would, if I was the HR manager or the decision maker in any industry, I would like to ensure that those persons who are going to resume duties with me have taken at least their first vaccine if not both the vaccines, because there has been a different parameter for the second vaccine to happen in respect of different kind of vaccines. Therefore, you can't take the first vaccine today and the second vaccine tomorrow. But at least the first vaccine should be taken by all those people who are going to resume work. I think that would basically be the core of my parameter when I'm going to resume work.
Great. Thank you. We have Mr. Brahm Bharadwaj. I'll request Mr. Brahm to kindly unmute and ask your question. Mr. Bharadwaj, please unmute. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It is a good session, but there is no question at this moment I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent,
great.
excellent.
Yeah.
I
Mr.
have a lot of
Kalyan
questions.
Kumar.
I have a lot of
Yeah.
questions in my mind.
Yeah, Mr. Kalyan Kumar, please ask your question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jitendra, for giving this opportunity to us. And it was a very nice session and clarified a lot of doubts. I had two questions here. One is related to layoff, because you talked about Section 2, triple K, and you mentioned that, in case the employee present himself and, and employer is not able to give, job to him, and the second half, in case he present again and again employer is not able to give job to him, in that case he'll be entitled for full wages, number one. But in case some employee, suppose employee who has not presented himself to the job, so in that situation, what will be the situation? Whether he'll be considered on layoff, we can automatically consider him on a layoff. This is my first question.
Should I respond to it?
Yes, sir. I'll be asking next question once we finish this.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. No, the provisions of the layoff is very clear, and I had highlighted it during the course of my discussion also, that if the employee presents himself for employment and the employer refuses to take on duty, then it amounts to layoff. But if the employee is unable to present himself for duty, and that could be for any reason, because he does not want, he has some social engagement at home, or he is prevented by the law of the land due to curfew imposed by COVID from coming to work, then it would not amount to layoff.
Okay.
It would not be layoff to my mind. Very clear.
Okay. Thank you. My second question, this is related to leave provision during COVID-19, as the issue was that, whether employer can ask employee to take leave or not, whether he can be sent on leave or not. Now the leaves, we have a privileged leave, or we have, casual leave, and then we have sick leave. So some people, like workers and all, they are covered under ESIC, so they are not covered under that sick leave provision. Now, in that situation, somebody has fallen sick, or somebody, who is not having, privileged leave to his credit. So what will be the situation in that case? Whether how employer can ask him to take leave, or in case he is not having any leave, whether it will tantamount to leave without wages?
It would broadly be tantamounting to leave without wages, but let me give you an overall picture. The first part of it is if he is covered by ESI. If he is covered by ESI and he falls sick, then he would get benefits from the ESI. And ESI and EPFO had formulated their schemes for providing succor to the employees who are covered by these two schemes. So they would definitely get benefit of ESI. Now, the person who is not covered by ESI, or for him, you can give the privilege leave, because at the end of the day, if a person gets some amount of money which is not disputed, for example, the employer is not disputing it, he's giving money, and the employees also realize that in the circumstances which are prevailing, बहुत सारे ऐसे लोग हैं जिनको वेतन ही नहीं मिल रहा, उस पर्टिकुलर सिचुएशन में उसको उसकी लीव के एवज में वेतन मिल रहा है, that itself should be a consolation to that person. Now what happens when leave is over? Then would he be leave without pay? Leave without pay is meaningless if he is not getting any money. So again, you revert to para 4.1 in the FICUS case, that ultimately I think most of these cases would have to be resolved either by a final judgment from the Supreme Court, which I think is difficult for Supreme Court to give an umbrella decision of all cases, because in its ficus judgment, it has recognized that all employers are not placed equally. The government, of course, has a tremendous amount of resources at its disposal, and so it is able to pay all its employees, its contractual employees. But a private employer, maybe a bigger one, does have that kind of a money, and he is able to pay his employees over a protracted period of time without getting work done from them. But a smaller employees, and during the course of my work, especially when I was posted in Trans Yamuna area, and we would get industrial disputes, sometimes it was difficult for me to realize who the worker is and who the employer is. So if you have, these, I'm not talking of these MSMEs, I'm talking of these micro mini industries. What used to happen in the Trans Yamuna area very frequently, an employee is terminated, he gets a lump sum from his employer by way of settlement, and he sets up the same kind of industry at his place, industry which does not require any machinery or any equipment, and he starts working. Now that kind of an employer would take some time to get going. And so if you ask him to pay, there have been cases before us when we were talking of compromise, and the employer turned up and said, look, sir, the kind of money which the employee is asking, I'd rather give the keys of my establishment to him. I don't have that kind of money to pay. So you cannot have a universal decision, as rightly observed and directed by the Supreme Court of India. So it would all depend on your own financial situation.
One last question, sir, if you permit.
Yes, sir, most welcome. Most welcome.
I don't see any provision of sabbatical, in the labor laws.
You don't see any provision of
sabbatical, in case, whether employer can, allow sabbatical, because sabbatical is a win-win situation, and employee does not lose his job with the employment. And since it's COVID-19, 2 months, 3 months, it is a temporary situation. So whether employee can be asked to go on sabbatical, where, employer does not pay the wages, and once he comes back.
I don't see why an employer would oppose such a scenario. If the employee is willing to stay away during the COVID period without demanding wages, I think it's a wonderful kind of a scenario for the employer.
Okay.
And, if you look at the ficus case again, the ficus case has very clearly laid down para 41.1 that if a settlement is arrived at between the two parties, it would prevail over everything.
Okay.
So if in case of sabbatical, there's technically an agreement between the worker and the employer, that employer agrees to let the employee go on sabbatical, and therefore this would prevail over everything, even if it is not a written settlement.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Aapka kalyan ho.
Thank you. In fact, there's a question in Q&A by Mr. KJ Rao. He has asked, what are the formalities for negotiation so that it can be valid in the court of law?
The standard conditions would apply. And the standard conditions are that the case must go before a conciliation officer. Sorry, let me go a step backwards. The two parties can sit down together and negotiate. And if they're able to come to a settlement, they can forward the settlement to the conciliation officer and the government of the appropriate government of that area for registration of that settlement. Once the settlement is registered, it becomes binding on the signatories to the settlement. The second option is, if they are unable to enter into a bipartite settlement, they can go before the conciliation officer, and during the course of conciliation, a settlement can be arrived at. If a settlement is arrived at during the course of conciliation, it becomes binding not only on the parties to the discussions, but on all parties in the organization. So suppose there are 2 unions or 3 unions. If a settlement is arrived at during the conciliation proceedings, it will become binding on all the unions. Of course, what the conciliation officer would take as a precaution is he would generally like to invite the other unions also for discussions. And finally, if there is no settlement, it would have to go for adjudication. Of course, the choice of arbitration also exists. I hope that clarifies the issues that you have raised.
I'm sure. Yeah, if there are any questions, kindly raise your hands. I'll promote you in this panelist box. We have Mr. Alisan, Amit Gupta ji, Ms. Anita, Mr. Brajesh Prasad, Mr. DP Singh, Janice, Javed, Mr. KJ Rao has asked question, Mr. Krishna Rai, Mr. Mayank Dice, Mr. Raj Kapoor, Mr. Rakesh Mehra, Mr. Rex, Ms. Shilpi, Ms. Sumedha Pradhan, Mr. Yugraj. If there are any questions, kindly raise your hand and you can come in this panel and you can ask your question directly to a domain expert, Mr. Piyush Sharma, one-to-one. We have another question. Okay, Mr. Rao has in fact written. Thanks, sir. Okay. Attendees. I think, Mr. Sharma, most of the queries definitely have been resolved. Therefore, there are no questions. Otherwise, normally we feel multiple questions in such, workshops, because since this directly affects the employers, their cash flows, their, sort of an entire service documentation and everything, particularly after COVID, since there are a lot of changes. Sometimes you have to draw. There's a very, thin margin, like where to comply, where not to comply, whether to go for it or whether not to go for it. There are, as you rightly said, some of the judgments, there is some ambiguity also. It's very difficult to actually uh, come out with a conclusion that okay, now this judgment relates to this particular point, and let's go accordingly. Because of this ambiguity, our employers definitely they are facing a lot of troubles day in day out. So with this, I'll request our delegates, like if you have any further questions, you can send email to us. We will definitely try to get your queries resolved from Mr. Piyush Sharma. He has in fact he has been very kind that he has said that he'll be sharing the presentation with all of you. So post this webinar, Ms. Ladli Khatun, my colleague, will be sending the presentation to all of the registered delegates, so that you can actually keep it for your own record and as a a reference booklet whenever there is any sort of a challenge or any query, and immediately then you can refer to a particular order, the matter which was in the court and whatever judgment has been prescribed, and accordingly you can take your own decisions. So I think with this note, Mr. Piyush Sharma, I think we should come to an end. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with all the delegates. We have become more informed HR practitioners, since HR thing and accounting thing, it keeps on evolving, and particularly in pandemic when things are highly fluid. Sometimes there are lockdowns, sometimes there are intermittent lockdowns, sometimes on every Monday there's a new notification in terms of opening of different establishments. So normally when we think of this, normally we think of only MNCs or large corporate entities, even SMEs, but there are self-employed people also. There are many small shops also wherein a lot of traction is required in order to make it understand, like what is the real sense, how a particular thing should be interpreted. And as we know that at the central government level, there's a lot of consolidation of the labor laws, in which we know that 44 labor laws, they have been converted to 4 codes, which covers the wages, social security, occupational safety, health and working conditions, and the industrial relations. So definitely once this is set in motion, it will definitely reset this entire regulatory framework. And my point is that no doubt the labor laws, they have a very much pride of place in regulating the labor. But the regulatory regime also covers other branches of law, like competition laws, investment law, municipal laws, and any regulatory solution, it should must factor in this aspect also. And this is especially true when once we deal with self-employed persons, where occupational safety and conditions of work are not determined in workplaces which is provided by an employer, but it may require provisioning of hygiene and safety in different sort of geographical settings, like access to spaces which are regulated by municipal laws, for example, even in case of street vendors, or provisioning of housing in case of home workers. Also, with the emergence of platform and gig economy, which is normally regulated by the competition law, as for example in the case of cab aggregators, or this food aggregators, the labor regulation, it needs to incorporate such a broadened field of operation. So we in fact look forward for this new labor codes, which in fact there was a news last week that probably this may be operational from 1st October. However, like it depends like how there's a coronavirus, how this actually goes, what is the situation at that point in time. And we are sure that we are very positive that probably now things will be in better shape, and there will be a healthy employee-employee relationship, and whatever challenges our employees as well as the payroll and compensation officials are facing at this point in time, everything will be resolved in times to come. So thank you indeed very much, Mr. Piyush Sharma, for your expertise and sparing your valuable time. And we look forward for such very engaging and interactive sessions in near future also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jitendra Singh. Thank you very much, PhD and the participants. I wish there would have been more questions. It would have tested my skills to myself, and it would have perhaps made the situation clearer. But then, be that as it may, it was a lovely session. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Look forward. Thank you.